paying our obeisance to His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we are in our journey for chapter 14, and we'll be starting this chapter today. And like we know, this falls within the Jnana Yoga section of Bhagavad Gita, which is the last 6 chapters. Now, this is comparatively a smaller chapter. And the title of the chapter is The 3 Modes of Material Nature. We have, for our convenience, divided it into 3 sections. The first section is covering shloka 1 to 13, which talks about conditioning of soul by material modes, how we are in this material world and we are conditioned by these 3 modes of nature. 14 to 18 shloka covers the effect of conditioning by modes, what are the effects. And the last section, 19 to 27 shloka, covers how to transcend this mode. That is how to overcome, go above these modes. That is becoming gunatita. Yeah. Now, we have to understand that these modes, like what are the 3 modes? Mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Yeah. Now, when we are talking about transcending the modes, we are talking about a mode which is above the mode of goodness. Yeah, that is, it is in a transcendental position, and this is called as, like in Hindi, we call it as Sattvagun, Rajogun, and Tamogun. Yeah? Now, this, when we are talking about transcending the modes, going above goodness, that is Shuddha Sattva. Yeah? That mode is above all the 3 modes, and that is called as Shuddha Sattva. Yeah. Now, we learned in second chapter, which is the 45th verse. If you have the Gita close to you, you can open that. It's second chapter, 45th verse. And the shloka was like, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna, Nirdvando Nitya Sattvastu, Niryoga Kshema Atma. Yeah? So what the shloka meant was Traigunya Vishaya Veda. Yeah? The Vedas, they mainly deal with the subject matter of these 3 modes. Yeah? These 3 modes of material nature. So Krishna is saying Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastu. Yeah? Niryoga Kshema Atma. Yeah? So what Krishna is saying is that, become transcendental to these 3 modes, and that is go beyond these 3 modes. Yeah? And, and that will help you to establish himself, right? So when we learn this, how can we transcend the modes? We'll learn in that section that it is only through devotional service that we can transcend these modes. Yeah, that is through bhakti. So again, like 13th chapter, even though it was falling under the Jnana Yoga section, we learned, right? The conclusion was that bhakti is good. Similarly, in 14th chapter, we will learn that in the end, the way to transcend these material modes, it can only be done by bhakti to overcome this. So again, Krishna is concluding that bhakti, is the key. Yeah. Now today we'll try to cover the first 2 sections, Krishna willing, from shloka number 1 to 18. Yeah. And this is, the title is The Conditioning of the Soul by the Material Modes. Yeah. Now, just before we step into 14th chapter, we will see how, there is a correlation, between 13th and 14th. How are we stepping into it? Yeah? So this shloka was there in 13th chapter, the 22nd verse, which was Purushaha Prakriti Stohi Bhungte Prakriti Jan Gunan Karanam guna sangosya sad asadyoni janmasu. Now, Krishna already mentioned in 13th chapter that the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying these three modes of nature. Yeah. This is due, why? Because of his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. Yeah. Now, this is Krishna is already highlighting here that what is the cause of our suffering? Because of our association with this material nature. Yeah? We are conditioned, enjoying within this material nature. And this is the seed verse, for 14th chapter. Because why? Because it is telling us how the jiva got associated with the modes of nature. Yeah. And because of this association, only the jiva is transmigrating from one species to other. Yeah. And why? Because it was our desire to enjoy. We saw in 13th chapter that we are also, the jiva is also Purusha, right? Enjoyer. Because it was our desire to enjoy, that's why Krishna created this material world. Right? We learned in 3rd chapter, 10th verse, that why this material world was created. It was created for us to, by Krishna, to give us a platform, right? To perform bhakti and go back. A platform which was given because we had the desire to enjoy, independent of Krishna. Yeah. So the material world was made. And once we get here, material world, what does it mean? Material nature. Once we are here, that means we are conditioned and we are controlled by these three modes of material nature because they bind us. Yeah. And that is their duty as an energy of Krishna. Right? So once we are here in this material world, it binds us. Okay. And this shloka particularly highlights the word bhunkte. What does bhunkte mean? The same thing. It's like that kind of independent enjoying mentality we as jivas had. And because we had that desire to enjoy independent of Krishna, we are fallen into this material. Yeah. That's why we call ourselves as fallen souls. Yeah. So, and once we are here, right, we asked for it and Krishna gave it, right, in the form of this material nature. So once we are here, we have to follow the laws of the nature, right? So we have to follow the laws of this material nature, right? We learned that before that, say, a dog, right? He gets that body, from the material nature, and he has to act within that. He has a boundary, right, to act. It can only bark. All it can do is bark. So it is conditioned by that material body which it got to perform, right? To live that. Similarly, a bird, it is conditioned within that body. We are conditioned within this body as humans. We cannot fly, right? If we want. Why? Because we are conditioned by it. Okay. So it is important for us to understand that, this verse clearly shows that, it is because of our enjoying, mentality that, we are coming in association with this material nature, right? And then we undergo, good and evil in this. Okay. Now, what is the connection between 13th and 14th chapter? So in the last verse, which we just discussed in 13.22, like I explained, Krishna is explaining how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. Why do they transmigrate? Because they are conditioned, because of their association with this material nature. Okay. And chapter 14, what Krishna is doing is that he explains what are these modes of material nature, and what is their, how they work, and how do they bind jivas, and how they can be described by, destroyed by bhakti. Okay. So their role, Yeah, how do they work? How do they bind us? All of this detail is given in this chapter. Yeah. So now, like we have read here, association, right? That is the cause, right? In 13.22. That's why it's very important that we don't take a random association, because any kind of association we make in this current life, in this current body we have, it determines our next life. Okay? Our karma, see, we learned that karma and desire are the two reasons, right? Precursors, right? Now, our karma will be dependent on what? Our karma, our activities will be influenced by which mode we are in, whether we are in mode of goodness, mode of passion, or mode of ignorance, and also our association with what kind of mode we have. If we are associating with people, around with mode of ignorance, there is a high chance we also fall down, because association is the key. And because of this kind of association, it results in us transmigrating from one body into another. And what kind of body will we get in next life? It depends on that, our activities, based on our association in the current life. Okay, I'll go a bit slow because at times this chapter might get a bit complex, and but yeah, we will try to have more, best possible time for the questions as well towards the end. Yeah? Now, stepping into the 14th chapter now, the first shloka, right? Krishna speaks the highest knowledge, right? The shloka goes like Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Param Bhuya Pravakshyami Jnananam Jnanam Uttamam Yajñatva Munayah Sarve Param Siddhim Ito Gataha. Right? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, again, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection. Right? Now, Krishna again starts saying, like we learned in the Bhakti Yoga section, right? In chapter 7 and 9, Krishna started with glorifying the knowledge he was going to give, right? We learned that how it was like confidential, during, our consciousness, the way Bhagavad Gita goes is Krishna starts in the second chapter, in the first six especially, where he reveals the confidential knowledge. Then he reveals the more confidential, right? He mentions that in the Bhakti Yoga section. And then we come to the 9th chapter where he says it's the most confidential knowledge, right? Now, when we went through these chapters, Krishna started with glorifying the knowledge. Same thing he's doing here in the 14th chapter. Yeah, he again starts by glorifying the knowledge like before. Yeah? And what he's saying here, that he's sharing the supreme wisdom with Arjuna, and which is the best of all knowledge. Yeah, knowing which he is highlighting that all sages have attained this supreme perfection. Now, why is Krishna highlighting sages here? He's not using the word devotees. He's using the word munayaha, right? Munis, right? Krishna is using the word sages because we have to remember this section is Gyan Yoga section, right? It is primarily for munis, for yogis, for Gyan yogis, who try to understand, they have their analytical study of matter and spirit, right? And once they understand more and more of this knowledge, yeah, then Krishna is saying, as they understand more and more and they attain the highest level, then they attain the perfection, supreme perfection. That's why it is highlighted here as Munaya. Okay, so because they have the tendency to have that analytical study. We studied in yoga ladder, right? That Gyan yogis are primarily with the analytical study, Sankhya yoga, right? study, the knowledge of spirit and matter. They are more into it. Yeah? Now, while Krishna is glorifying this, this is from the purport. Hari Krishna Prabhuji, will you be able to read it?
Yeah, yes, Mata. From the seventh chapter, glorification of knowledge. From the seventh chapter to the end of 12 chapters, Sri Krishna in detail reveals the absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead. Now, the Lord himself is further enlightening Arjuna. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attained perfection and transferred to the spiritual world. The Lord now explains the same knowledge in a better way. This knowledge is far a superior to all other processes of knowledge, thus far explained. And knowing this, many attain perfection. Thus, it is expected that one who understands this 14th chapter will attain perfection. Bhagavad Gita 14.1.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So Krishna is highlighting, right, in that verse that one who understands this material modes of nature, 14th chapter, they will attain perfection. Okay, because ultimate conclusion, see, knowledge. Why? Because now Krishna is giving us more insight on, we learned about Purusha. Now his focus is more on Prakriti, right? That's what Prakriti, material nature. So see, and once we understand this knowledge, what is the ultimate conclusion of a knowledge? The ultimate conclusion of knowledge is that to perform devotional service. That's what we understand. As we understand more and more, as we understand that we are not this body, we are soul, we understand the intricacies of it. What happens? The purity comes in, right? And the more purity comes in, we perform more devotional service, right? So it is like, as we learned this before, right? As you perform devotional practice, you get more pure, and the transcendental knowledge within you, Krishna eliminates that. We learned that, right? He it's like cleaning the mirror, right? As you clean more, it's more visible. Yeah. So that's why it is important for us to understand this chapter, because it helps to attain perfection. Krishna is highlighting, right? Now in second shloka, Krishna is highlighting result of attaining that knowledge. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. What does this mean? Right? Once we are fixed in this knowledge, we understand how we are bounded, by this material laws of nature, by these modes. Krishna is saying one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. What does he mean by my own? That means that, let us go to the next slide. It is like the root of Sat Chit Ananda. Krishna's original form is Sat Chit Ananda, right? So we transcend, once we understand this knowledge, we transcend the modes, right? It helps us to transcend the modes. And once you transcend the mode, you reach that transcendental phase, that Shuddha Sattva, wherein we also are, in that position of Sat Chit Ananda. Because qualitatively we are the same as Krishna. It's quantitatively which is different. And we gave the example of like ocean water, right? Like if you take one drop of ocean water, the quality of the one drop is equal, salty as well, like the ocean water is same as the ocean water, but the quantity is different. Similarly, qualitatively we are one with Krishna, but quantitatively we are not. Yeah? Now we'll see here. That's what Prabhupada explains in the purport, that after acquiring the perfect transcendental knowledge, one acquires qualitative equality with the Supreme Personality of God, becoming free from repetition of birth and death. Because once you reach the Shuddha Sattva, the transcendental level, right, beyond the three modes of material nature, then we don't have, we will not have, we are back to Krishna, back to God. We will not be undergoing the birth and death cycle. So then the purport says, one does not, however, lose his identity as an individual soul. There are thought processes that we learned this before, Mayavadi philosophy, right? That once you get liberated, you merge, right? You become one with Krishna. So it's very clear that no, we don't lose our identity. Like we learned, we have an eternal relationship with Krishna. Okay, in one of those 5 primary relationships, right? Shant Rasa, Dasya Rasa, Sakya Rasa, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, right? So we have an eternal original relationship with Krishna. And once we go back to Godhead, we continue serving with Krishna, continue serving Krishna in our original relationship with Krishna. Because that time we are not, these modes are covering our, our understanding of our original relationship with Krishna. Yeah. So then the purport, generally in the material world, whatever knowledge we get is contaminated by the 3 modes of material nature. Knowledge which is not contaminated by the 3 modes of nature is called transcendental knowledge. As soon as one is situated in that transcendental knowledge, he is on the same platform as the Supreme Person. Right? So same platform as in, like I said, Satchit Anand, full of knowledge, full of bliss and eternal. Right? Now Krishna's knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, right? In Bhagavad Gita, or Bhagavad, it is not under material nature. It is not under modes. That's why it is called as transcendental. It is above the modes. Yeah. So, so with that, we will, come one more thing from the purport, that those who have no knowledge of the spiritual sky hold that after being freed from the material activities of the material form, this spiritual identity becomes formless. Like I said, Nirakar, right? The Mayavadi, without any variegatedness. However, just as there is material variegatedness in this world, in spiritual world, there is also variegatedness. Those in ignorance of this think that spiritual existence is opposed to material variety. But actually in the spiritual sky, one attains a spiritual form. There are spiritual activities and there are spiritual situations, is called as devotional life. So we do have our original spiritual form. It is very clear. It's not that we get merged and we don't have a form. No, that is the theory of Mayavadis like this. Now, variegatedness means what? That means that we will have different relationships, based on our original identity. Okay, so that variegatedness will be there in spiritual world also. We'll be serving Krishna in different capacities, okay, in our spiritual form. Okay, now in the first 2 shlokas, Krishna has glorified the knowledge, right? Now going forward in further shlokas, Krishna will now begin to explain the relationship between the Jiva, Prakriti and himself. What is the relationship between these 2? Remember that triangle which we always went through. Jiva desires, Lord sanctions, and material nature executes. Now Krishna is showing us, explaining the relationship, how this is, right? Now going further, now this is the 3rd shloka. The Lord impregnates material nature. Yeah. Jyoti Mataji, will you be able to read it?
Yes, Mataji. The Lord of impregnates material nature. The total material substance called Brahma is the source of birth, and it is that Brahma that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Bhagavad Gita 14.3. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji. So Krishna is saying that, what is saying, the total material substance, the whole material substance, it's called as Brahman. right? And that Brahman gives rise to the, to a birth, right? Of different species, and when we are saying, Krishna is highlighting here, who impregnates that Brahman? It's Krishna. And only when Krishna impregnates that Brahman, that material nature, the different living beings are made possible. Okay. Now again, Brahman word is used here. Remember, we learned before that this is a word which can be used in various contexts, right? Like Brahman can be used for living entity, it can be used by the material nature, used for the material nature. It can also be used for, the super soul who is controlling the material nature and the jiva, both. It can be used at various levels. Now here the Brahman word is used for what? The total material substance, which is the material nature. And what Krishna is saying is this material nature called as Brahman is there. And what he does is he impregnates. And we learned this, right? Mahavishnu from Bhagavatam. So many times we have come across this, that Mahavishnu, just with his glance, impregnates the material nature. And through that impregnation, further creation happens, right? So Krishna is saying the same thing. It's him who impregnates. It's like, the father impregnates, into the mother's womb. Only then, the creation happens, right? So similarly, material nature is like a mother, like our mother, and Krishna is our father, okay, through which the creation happens. Okay. Now, further, the examples, quite a lot of times people say that, that we have come out of just the material nature. There is nothing behind the material nature, Prakriti is everything. It's the origin, it gives us origin, all of that. Now, very beautiful example is given by in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, where it says the scorpion lays its egg in the pile of rice. And sometimes it is said that scorpion is born out of rice. It's like people say, we have come out of this material nature. Similarly, so some people say scorpion is born out of rice. No, but the rice is not the cause of the scorpion. Actually, the eggs were laid by the mother. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of the birth of living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of God, and then only seems to come out as product of material nature. Thus, every living entity, according to his past activities, has a different body created by this material nature, so that entity can enjoy or suffer according to his past. The Lord is the cause of all manifestations of living entity in material. Okay, so it's not material nature, through which we are coming. It's the seed which is put into the material nature by Krishna. Material nature is just facilitating Krishna. Material nature is facilitating, Krishna by providing all the matter, right? Matter to create that different kind of bodies, different kind of 84 lakh species. So material nature is giving that matter, to Krishna, so that specific species can be created. Okay. Now, further, that's the relationship. Okay. Now, further on the same lines, Krishna explains here that Krishna is the father and Prakriti is the mother. So, Sarvayonishu Kanteya Murtayaha Sambhavantiyaha Tasam Brahma Mahatyonir Aham Bija Pradapita. Aham Bija Pradapita. I am the seed giving father. Okay, so the translation is, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed giving father. Okay, so this shloka, 14.4, it highlights Krishna saying Aham Bija Pradapita. Very important, that he is the seed giving father. See, in purport, Prabhupada has explained that life, actually, living entities exist everywhere, even in the sun planet, moon planet. There are living entities everywhere. Okay, and who is the seed giving father? Everywhere, from the patal to the topmost loka, which is Brahmaloka. Even all these planets, other planets, life is there. Krishna is the seed giving father. Okay, so of course, living entities living in that particular planet has a specific body which can sustain that planet requirements. We from this planet cannot. Okay, so each of them, the material nature gives the kind of body which can help them sustain that particular, environment. Okay, that's the job of the material nature, to give that matter. Okay, and Krishna is responsible for existence of all species of life in material nature. Anything, any living entity in material nature, Krishna is responsible for that existence. Right? Okay, so far Krishna has explained that first and second verse, the glorifying the knowledge. And then further we learn third and fourth that he explained the relationship between Jiva, Prakriti, and himself. Okay. Now from shloka 5 to 9, it will be explained how this material nature binds us and makes us conditioned. And that's why we called ourselves as conditioned souls, because we are conditioned by what is given by this material nature. Okay. Now, next shloka, fifth shloka, the jiva's bondage under the spell of modes. Yeah. Prasad Prabhuji, will you be able to read this? I'm not able to. I think it's not able to unmute. Right. Yeah. Kavya Mataji, can you read it?
Yes, Mataji. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Bhagavad Gita 14.5. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, right now Krishna is explaining what this material nature consists of. Right? It has the three modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And when we are, we come in contact with this material nature, we become conditioned by these modes. Okay. And why we came in contact? Like we learned, because of our bhunkte mentality, that enjoyer mentality. And once we come in contact, we have to follow the laws of this material nature. We will be conditioned between these three modes. Like Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he gives more insight on kind of definition of what this modes are. He explains that modes are, what are exactly these modes? They are actually things or concepts, or what are they? And he says that they are actually things which are subtle. They are not gross. They're subtle. They're kind of a subtle force, within us, between our gross body, the matter, and our consciousness. It is kind of a subtle force, which pushes us hard, and we cannot really see these force or feel because they are so subtle, but material nature is actually acting through these modes on us. And we can feel that every day in our life, like sometimes we see that it's the same us, same us, but we are in a good mood or a bad mood. We really turn out things with high productivity sometimes, and sometimes it's really low productivity, and sometimes we are really enthusiastic, sometimes we are really lazy, to do things. We are the same person. We have the same expertise. We have the same qualification. We have the same status. But what happens? What is influencing us with this ups and downs? Because it's not giving us the same output. It's the same situation, same us, but not the same output. Why? And we also sometimes see that we plan in life, we plan something so robustly, very pakka planning we do. But it turns out to be something else only. It fails, the plan fails. And sometimes we also experience that we don't put so much of our effort planning something, but things just turn out without much planning. much more better than we would have thought. Why do we undergo this? You know, we actually don't think about it, nor we observe it. You know, but we have to understand that there is a science behind this. You know, the three modes of material nature actually control the reactions. You know? But what we do is we fail to see the impact of these modes on us. We think that no, we can control things. No, you know, because we see that modes impact us because, you know, we don't know about the science. Yeah, we think we are not under any control. You know, rather we feel that we are only controlling it. That's the thing. You know, what we try to control all the time, what is it we are trying to control all the time? Can somebody say, what is it that we are trying to control all the time?
Nature, material
Yes.
nature,
Exactly.
prakriti.
Yeah, so matter, right? We are trying to control a matter, nothing else, you know, all the time. For example, you know, I was hearing this that, for example, TV, right? We have the remote of the TV with us. We think we are controlling the TV, you know, but actually, in turn, we don't realize that, you know, we are sitting in front of this box and, you know, we start thinking, I'll just watch it 10 minutes. And then that stretches 1 hour. It goes on. We don't realize that we are actually in turn getting controlled by that matter. Even though we have the remote and we have the mentality, we think that we are controlling. No, we are getting control. Similarly, let's take the example, you know, say a person is very, ambitious and wants to buy a new car, right? A very luxury car, you know, or luxury flat or a, you know, house, anything. Yeah. Now, for that matter, the person is continuously putting effort, right? You know, and the brain, you know, eventually what happens that, you know, maybe after 10 years, we tend to achieve that. We tend to have the car or we tend to have the house. But what exactly happened that matter is actually controlling our brain. You know, we are getting controlled by that. And that's why we tend to, you know, put so much of, you know, like become workaholic, put everything, and we get controlled. If something doesn't fall in our plan in place, we get, you know, anxious. And what is controlling all this? If we think, trying to understand the science, it's actually that matter which is actually controlling us, even though we think we have things in control. You know, and then comes the understanding that why are we trying to control? Because it is trying to give us a false understanding that we are independent, you know, that we have control over things, you know, because our false ego, you know, because of our false ego, we eventually tend to think that we are independently managing all that is happening in our life. That's why we are trying to control, because that gives us that sense, that false sense that we have, you know, we can manage everything independently, you know, in our life. You know? But actually, and that's why Krishna said, you know, in that 2. No, it was not 2.4. In 3rd chapter, he says that prakrateya kriya karmani, guna karmani sarvasha, ahankara vimudatma kartaram iti kartaham iti manyate. I think it is 3.27. Yes. So prakrate kriya karmani, you know, kriyamanani, sorry. So that means prakriti is the one who is doing the work. It's only prakriti that is doing the work. You know, guna karmani sarvasha. It is modes. Guna means modes. It is actually modes which are doing everything. You know, ahankara vimudhatma. Because of just that false ego, you know, we think kartaham iti manyate, that we think that we are doing it. You know, this independent thinking is because of our false ego. This whole thing is actually happening, everything under the instructions of the material nature, under the modes, which are modes are given by the material nature, right? The modes kind of reflect on what kind of food we are having, what kind of ambitions we have, what kind of reactions we give, so actually each of our activity are driven by these modes. And what is the whole purpose of understanding this modes? What does Krishna say? The whole purpose of understanding the science of material modes of nature is to understand that how they are acting on us, and then to understand how can we transcend this control, somebody controlling us, and that is only through bhakti, which we'll learn in next class. Okay, so like we studied, so there are three modes: mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now goodness can be, people who are helping, caring for others. They're peaceful, they're happy in what they have. That is mode of goodness. Yeah. Mode of passion, it's what? It's a competitive nature, hankering. There is a constant hankering, to get something. It's like fruitive results. Passion is that. And in this material world, we are all under this majority of the mode which we are covered with this passion. And then comes ignorance. Yes, mode of ignorance is like laziness, addiction to something, excessive anger, always doing nasty things. That is mode of ignorance. Okay, and we can correlate this with an example. Like we have an example of, say, there's a theater and there's a fire broke out. Yeah, now people are running around. How will a person be, who is in a mode react, in such situation? How different people react in different situations. So for people who are in mode of goodness, what would they do? They would look out for the fire extinguisher, or the any process which can, help the whole chaos which is happening. They are in mode of goodness. Mode of passion, they will be running around here and there, and in their run around to save themselves, they might be stamping, people, and they might be, causing havoc to others, but it doesn't matter. They want their foods. And mode of ignorance is like, there are some who will be just sitting there doing nothing. They are not active, like mode of passion people. They are not active. They are not thinking. They are not moving. They are not acting. They are not doing anything. Okay. Now, see, sometimes we may see that we may be having a predominance of a specific nature, right, by birth, right? We are we are placed in a particular, say, majority, of a particular mode. That doesn't mean that we cannot cultivate the other mode. We can always practice and cultivate and change the mode we are in. So now, for example, if we are passionate about something heavily, if we associate with passionate people, that passion would go higher. But if you're passionate really about, say, having more property and something like that, but if you associate with people who are in mode of goodness, then slowly we get influenced by that goodness, and we realize that excessive hankering is not needed. It's unnecessary, and then we slowly come into the level of goodness. So that association is, the key. Yeah. For example, let's see ourselves. Before we came into bhakti, what was the mode we were, which was like predominance. But after you come to bhakti, you'd start seeing things, right? There is a kind of move from one mode to another. We would see that in ourselves, but we are cultivating, right? It's like I was seeing an example that a person takes a New Year resolution, that I am gonna not smoke, this year, yeah, for not to smoke. And then if this person who has such a resolution, if he associates with people who are heavy smokers, what would happen? That passion would increase, and he would even high chances for him to fall down into mode of ignorance from mode of passion, right? But if that such person who has that resolution associates with mode of goodness people, it makes it easy as a platform for that person to continue the resolution, right, with the non-smokers, right? So to perform bhakti, which is, to transcend all these three modes, like we learned, bhakti is the key essential component. And to perform bhakti, we should at least be in the platform of goodness, mode of goodness. Without that, we cannot transcend the modes. So mode of goodness is like a launching pad for us, to be in the journey of transcending the modes and to go into the pure state, which is Shuddha Sattva. Okay. Now, bondage by different modes. So 6th, 7th, and 8th verse, maybe Reshma Mataji, can you read it?
Yes, Mataji. Bondage by different modes. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating and is free, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. Bhagavad Gita 14.6. The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. Bhagavad Gita 14.7. O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode or madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Bhagavad Gita 14.8. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. So Krishna is giving about each mode. 14.6 talks about mode of goodness, right? Now, you may ask, what is wrong in being in mode of goodness, right? It's mode of goodness, so it should suffice. But Krishna is highlighting here that yes, it is purer than the other two modes, yeah. But even in this mode, you get conditioned. Conditioned by what? By happiness and knowledge. See, the difficulty here is that we as living entity, if we are situated in mode of goodness, a person who is situated in mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned, like, to feel that, okay, I have the required knowledge, I'm better than others, and I'm happy in what I have. There's kind of complacency which comes, and in this way, he is actually becoming conditioned. The examples, we can give here of what is given in the purport as scientists, philosophers, poets, all these, they are contented. They are like, they do their thing and they are not really, performing sinful actions, but it is like, if you remember, we gave the example of a jail, in a prison, if you are bounded, say, by the shackles made up of copper, or some are bounded by the shackles of silver, made up of silver, and some are bounded by the shackles of gold, things made up of gold. Yeah. But at the end, similarly here, the mode of goodness is the shackles of gold, mode of passion is shackles of silver, and mode of ignorance is the shackles made up of copper. But see, we have to understand, at the end of the day, Our aim is not to get shackled by gold chain. No, our aim is to get out of the jail, right? So mode of goodness is that it is still, you're still conditioned, you are still part of that jail, shackled by a, it is better, of course, than the other two, but still you are within that jail. Okay, so you are not out of that. Okay, so we have to understand that yes, mode of goodness is better than the other two, but we have to look for even transcending that, because it is still conditioned. You might say that, like, I am doing charity, I am doing good to others. Yeah, fine, that is mode of goodness. But you can't relax. You can't relax because you're still in the jail. You may be following the rules, but you're still in the jail. See, if we analyze, we may end up maybe only certain percentage of our life feeling good and happy. But we still undergo challenges, depressions, disease, birth, death, everything. So our thought process should be how to go beyond this birth and death. Because even in the mode of goodness, people will still undergo the good, even though they are doing good. But like we learned before, karma, akarma, and vikarma. Karma was, punya. Vikarma was papa. Akarma is transcendental for Krishna. So whether you do vikarma, yes, you have to take the birth back to bear the results. But even when you do punya, you will have to still, right? So either ways you have to, so mode of goodness, in mode of goodness also you have to undergo the birth and death. Yeah. So the mode of passion, like we learned, it is characterized mainly by hankering, right? Hankering for more and more and never being satisfied. And yeah, that's the mode of passion. And then ignorance it's the darkest mode, like we just mentioned that, people here, they are confused, they don't know what to do in a particular situation. They are, doing excessive of something that's there. And at the end, they don't end up doing good for self nor for others, right? With that, yeah, we'll move to the next. Yeah. So bondage by mode of passion. Yeah. So mode of passion is characterized by attraction between man and woman. Woman has attraction for man and man has attraction for woman. This is called the mode of passion. As long as one is hankering after these things, he has to work hard. Right? Therefore, it is clearly stated here that he becomes associated with the fruits of his activity and thus becomes bounded by such activity. In order to please his wife, children, and society, and to keep up his prestige, one has to work. See, the main principle of passion is, it's mentioned in Proverbs that it's the attraction between the genders. Yeah. See, man works hard because of work, to keep up his standards, right? To maintain wife, children, and then comes slowly, with that maintenance comes, the society, so it leads one into the other, right? So that hankering, to keep, and he eventually turns into, being workaholic, working very hard to keep up that prestige within the society, right? So that's what is the basis, the main principle of passion, mode of passion. Modern civilization is considered to be advanced in standard of the mode of passion. Formerly, the advanced condition was considered to be mode of goodness. Prior times, you would see that, the advanced condition, who is advanced, Brahmana is considered to be advanced, right? They are primarily in mode of goodness, right? They were considered, but now it's more of, who is well set, right, within society, that is considered as advanced, right? So that's what Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, that, advanced condition was considered as mode of goodness before, but now in today's modern society, it is mode of passion. Right? And if there is no liberation for those in mode of goodness, what to speak of those who are entangled in mode of passion, right? So goodness itself, we cannot transcend, right? Just by being in goodness. So there is no liberation there. So how can the other two modes have, right? And then same thing in the purport for mode of ignorance. The children that he conceives will also die. So death is sure. Still, people are madly accumulating money and working very hard all day and night, not caring for the eternal spirit. This is madness, right? In their madness, they are very reluctant to make advancement in spiritual understanding. Such people are very lazy. When they are invited to associate for spiritual understanding, they are not very much interested. Right? See, it is like uh, death is the reality, right? So even though we know at the end of life, we are not going to take anything along with us, it's not going to help. Still, a man is behind, right? He works like an ass overall. That's what Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that he works like an ass, to secure these things, which, for accumulating money. And this is mode of ignorance. Even after it's not going to help eventually, we still are striving towards that, right? So we are at 12:30. Okay, I'll try to speed up a bit. So overall, 9th shloka is giving us the summary. Yeah, Krishna gives a summary of the three modes in one shloka, right? From 6th, 7th, and 8th. So the 9th shloka is, O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion conditions one to fruitive actions. And ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness. Ignorance is opposite of goodness. In goodness, you are in knowledge. In ignorance, you are not. That knowledge is covered completely. A person in mode of goodness is kind of satisfied by his work, or just as, like we learned, the philosophers, the scientists, they may be engaged in a particular field of knowledge and they may be satisfied in that. But a man in mode of passion, they will be heavily engaged in fruitive actions, activities, and sometimes we see, like we learned, charity. They open many hospitals. They give a lot of charity to the institutions. All these. These are the signs of the mode of passion. And mode of ignorance, yeah, like we learned, they are neither good. They do neither good for self nor for others. Yeah, engaged in addiction and all of that. So now in 10th shloka, Krishna highlights that there is always a competition amongst modes. Yeah, and Hari Krishna Prabhuji, will you be able to read it?
I think some network issue.
Yeah,
We
the
can't
voice
hear
is
you.
breaking, Prabhuji. We can't hear you.
Competition amongst modes. Rajas tamas bhavati bharata. Raja tamaha sattvam rajas. Sometimes the passion and ignorance defeats goodness and ignorance, and the other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. Bhagavad Gita 14.20.
Thank you.
10, sorry.
That's fine. So there, what Krishna is saying is, like, like that palette colors, there you make the combination, and it's like it gives you so many different various colors just by the three primary colors we have, right? So with just three primary colors, if it can give us such varied range of different colors, Krishna is saying similarly, these modes, they always compete each other. Yeah, it's like there is nothing called as pure goodness, pure passion, pure ignorance in this material nature. everything, when we see a personality, it is a combination of these modes. Some may have predominantly mode of goodness, but mode of passion and ignorance is always also there. And that's why we saw the example, in the beginning today's class, that it's same us, but we react differently in different, same situation, same us, same status, same qualification, everything. But the output from our end is different, right? So a particular personality is a combination of different modes, different levels of each of these modes. We cannot say that one person is completely under mode of goodness, pure goodness. No, there's always a competition such that one mode defeats the other. Sometimes goodness gets defeated by, goodness and ignorance gets defeated by passion. Sometimes passion and ignorance gets defeated by goodness, and that, accordingly. So, and that's why we say, right, in our 24 hours of the day, time also plays a role, like we always say that our spiritual activity should always be done in the Brahma Muhurta, right? The early morning, right? Why? Because primarily it's seen that the mode of goodness, is during that time, right? So, and then later of the day, during the daytime, the passion takes the lead, and then night is considered as ignorance. And that's why we see that during the day we are passionate to, check off our checklist, right? To get our things done, to really drive ourselves and all of that. So, and during night, we see all these, we can correlate it with activities like theft, robbery, we see so many, bribery and all these things. These are ignorance mode, they happen mostly in night, because at that moment, at night, the ignorance defeats the other two modes, passion and ignorance. That takes the lead. So that's why within ourselves itself, we see such a kind of politics going on, that sometimes mode of goodness is, taking predominance within us. And we tend to do, activities in mode of goodness. Sometimes passion, sometimes we are really passionate and the goodness takes a backseat. So that's why, initially during the class we were learning, that by how can we drive down, the other two modes, passion and ignorance, right? We learned that with an example of that association, right? So by association, with a particular mode, we can change our modes. Yeah, like that smoker example which we did. Yeah. So now this is the 11th, 12th, and 13th shlokas, where Krishna is again highlighting about these three modes, the prominence. So 11th shloka, it states about the manifestation of mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of body are illuminated by knowledge. The person is in knowledge. Yeah. Passion, 12th shloka, O chief of Bharatans, when there is an increase in mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activities, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develops, right? Its passion is more of hankering, consistent hankering, fruitive results. And then ignorance, when there is an increase in mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested. Okay, so passion is like workaholics, like we know, and the person in ignorance is actually, the problem with the person is that they know that it is wrong, but they are still not able to come out of it. They don't want to come out of it. They kind of become blind. They don't want to know it. Yeah. Now, after explaining about the modes, Krishna now will explain about the effects of conditioning of these modes. Yeah. Now, because we are hitting the time, maybe I'll move this into the next session, and we'll conclude today over here. Yeah.